Anyway, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Monday, August 21st, 2023 meeting of the Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board agenda. Welcome, everybody. I did hear from Denise, who is not able to join us this evening, that I see we have a quorum, so we're ready to go. I don't believe the agenda changes, so the posted meeting agenda will stand. We have the meeting notes from Jim. Questions, comments? Concerns? May I have a motion to accept them? So moved. Thank you, Sharon. Second, please.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. You have the August 7 minutes. Have you all had a chance to review them? Are there any corrections? Comments? May I have a motion to accept them? Motion. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Michael. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstention, motion carries. Any correspondence or announcements? Anyone? Okay. Then we'll begin the meeting with new applications. The first up this evening is Alexander Chapel, 56 to 58 Fox Hollow Road, site plan, special use permit, and wetlands permit. Good evening.
Good evening. Sean Kemp on behalf of the applicant, Alexander Chapel.
All right, Sean, if you want to let us know what you'd like to do?
Sure. So back in June of 2016, my client was granted special use permit and a special permit to do some improvements to his property, site plan approval rather, to do some improvements to his property. After he commenced work on it, COVID happened, and there were some communications with the zoning enforcement officer at the time regarding what he felt was there were field changes. Turns out that Brian Tam has a little bit different interpretation of what these changes were. So essentially what we want to do is just have an amended site plan approval so that it accurately reflects the changes that were made to the property.
Do you want me to go through the updates that you have?
Sure. I think we were just on it,
Yeah, do you want to go through the whole thing, or
No.
I'm just going to get to the
I
photo?
think the greatest hits are towards the end. That would be exhibit,
This is exhibit 4,
yeah.
which shows the landscaping.
Yeah, and exhibit 6 actually outlines the changes, the variations from what was approved and
Yep.
what exists now. There were some trees planted, and that's what you were referencing. That kind of goes through the exact plantings that were done on the property. But essentially what we're looking at, there's a retaining wall, which is designated as letter A. So that was one retaining wall that had to be moved from the original site plan. Sorry, it's kind of awkward. Sorry, back to you. To the audience as well. But so this was a slight movement in the location of the retaining wall based on utilities. I will note that in connection with the site plan approval and special use permit that was granted in June of 2016, prior to that, there was a variance granted by the Zoning Board of Appeals, and that's the area variances. And in that granting of the variance, it noted that the topography of the property basically may require some of the locations of the things that were going to be improved to be slightly different than what was anticipated. And I think A is a perfect example of that. So it's not really that much site disturbance. I think it's maybe 9 feet it had to be moved. And then B is a wall that has not been built yet, but is proposed. And you'll see here the grading of the property is quite steep, and it goes down to the waterway there. And the idea is to help basically secure the property and prevent any erosion and things of that nature. C is a patio that was installed, a bluestone patio slash terrace, depending on, I guess, what you want to call it. But that was actually constructed in conformity with the terrain of the property. It wasn't like there was any earth brought in or things of that nature to construct that patio, but it was not depicted on the original site plan. So we want to make sure that that's on there. Also, D, this depicts some of there's walking paths around the property that weren't depicted on the original site plan, so that's another minor improvement. And then E, there's a small shed, I think it's less than 120 square feet. That was recently built. And then F is a little shelter for the barbecue. So that's really kind of the extent of the changes that were made, and that's what we're seeking the site plan approval for, the amended site plan, so that the town has an accurate record of what's been done at the property.
Do you want to talk any of the landscaping or trees removed?
I'm not so much of the landscape specialist, but there were plantings that were done. And to the extent that plantings were made, we've taken pictures of them and detailed the species of plants and trees that were planted to the best of our ability.
And Kim, were you asking about tree removals?
Yeah, I know that you said that some trees had to be removed, I think, because they were dead.
Yeah, there were some trees that were removed that were dead. I think one of the pictures even shows the tree that had fallen over. But everything was done with as little site disturbance as possible, given the proximity to the Fallsborough Creek. And that's a good picture of the patio slash terrace. And you can kind of, if you could just stop it, thank you so much. You can kind of, this allows you to appreciate that, the grade down to the creek there. And that's why, if you go to the right a little bit more, that's where the proposed retaining wall would be. So it also has like a safety component too.
Is this the barbecue shed? Or is
Correct.
this I think this is what you were saying with the slopes.
Yes. So that's basically the extent of the application.
Okay. Planning board members, questions?
Has anything done to the slope itself?
No.
So what was there when you began construction is still there?
Correct. That's correct.
And there's no sign of any kind of erosion down to the stream?
Not to date, there hasn't been any sign of that.
Anyone else? I've looked over Jim's comments, and I don't see anything that he's brought out as of significance at this point.
He just noted that these structures are within the 100-foot wetlands. I believe the 2016 application also had them in the wetlands too, but these are just further into the wetlands.
Yes, and the first time around, the board did not require a wetlands permit. They just allowed the construction to go, this is based on my review of documents, so I'm speculating a little bit, but I think the code allows for the development to take place with a special use permit, and that's what was granted. But on this go-around, there was a request made that we apply for a wetlands permit, so we did that as well.
So this application is for just the retaining wall?
No, it's actually, it's a site plan, it's overall amended site plan approval.
So for all of those things, but some of them were subject to the earlier special use permit.
Correct. And then in the application, we detail where it varies from what was originally approved and what's as-built, essentially.
Okay.
So the A, B, C, all
Right.
of these are the ones that were not included in the 2016 approval.
But they have been constructed or they're just proposed?
Some of them have been constructed. B has not been constructed.
Okay. The patio has been?
Patio has been.
Was the patio part of the special use permit from 2016?
No, it's not.
The
Barbecue.
letter E, yeah, the barbecue shed, was that?
Nope, that was not part of the original site plan. Again, this was based on communications with the prior zoning enforcement officer that said that they didn't need to be permitted, but it turns out that they should have been permitted, so we're trying to bring everything into compliance with the town. And it's not so much, things happen all the time, especially during COVID, where people probably did a lot of things verbally. I'm not saying that that's an excuse to not have proper site plan approval, but I think it does go to the fact that it's not like my client was just doing this willy-nilly, thinking that they can do whatever they want. Yeah.
And I believe this is within the LWRP?
Yes, yep. And do you know, because I know one of the ZBA variances was for the number of roof structures. Do you need any additional variances for like the shed and the barbecue?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Is it
Did you talk to the new zoning enforcement officer about that?
not about that specific issue, but I
But
have.
he's seen these.
Absolutely, yes. We've been in pretty regular contact regarding this matter.
Any more questions from the planning board? Any additional documents you need to see or request to see?
I don't know any, Michael, you know any?
No.
No, I don't think so.
Jim prepared a procedural resolution, which would accept the application and supporting documents as adequate for further review. Classify the proposed action as a type 2 action. My guess is that it would best be classified as minor accessory appurtenant residential structures. Ask to schedule a public hearing for the application for September 18th at 6:15, and directs the clerk to have the public hearing noticed and posted. And anybody want to do the field visit for this?
Sharon?
I'll go with the show.
Sharon and Sean?
And so refer the application to the CAB for written review and comment. And refer the application to HAPAC for review and written comment. Refer it to the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development pursuant to 239, General Municipal Law 239N. And authorizes Jim to start on the resolution, subject to change.
May I hear a motion? Sharon?
It also needs to go to the WAC.
WAC?
Yeah, WAC and CAB are usually the same group, but yes, both to do.
We'll go to the WAC and the CAB. Okay.
I move we accept it.
Thank you, Edna. I'll second.
I second.
Thanks, Frank. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Thank you, motion carries.
Thank you very much.
The next application, new application for this evening is Jonathan McCown, 664 River Road, site plan review. Good evening.
Hi, good evening. My name is Andrew McMahon. I'm here representing Jonathan McCown, actually one of the employees at Jonathan McCown's architecture firm. So the drawings put up in a second. So this is a minor addition that they're adding onto their kitchen so that they can add a refrigerator. Currently, the refrigerator is down in the basement, so they can run outside and cold to do some food. So they'd like to add a little bump out here. This is the house right here, and then this is a blow up. You see that little tiny speck right there. That is the site plan. If you go to the next page, I have.
Oh,
okay. So this is the house right here, that's the pump out is going to be. And these are a series of images along the road and going up on River Road right here to show you the kind of visibility of the building. So that is the pump out, and then these are the camera views, as it would be, looking back towards the house. As you can see, there's a significant amount of existing vegetation in the area which conceals the pump out from the side view. These vegetations, they would be all year round because the brush is quite thick in that area as well. Jump to the next page. Also the pump out, as you can see, this is the elevation of the front of the house. And it's so small that only pump comes out about 2 feet. It's not visible from the front of the building, front elevation. Jump to the next page. This right here is where the pump out is going to be situated between these 2 windows, located in this area on the back corner of the building. It will be constructed out of similar material to the existing building and painted to match. So essentially kind of camouflaging itself into the existing building. This was done a later addition to the screen porch they did several years ago after they restored the house.
And so you said the bump out is about right here?
Yes, so it's the line in this area right here, just between these 2 windows. And if you go to the next one, the next elevation is from the back side of the house. You can see it sticks out. Yep, that's right here. This is the elevation. And essentially what it does is it allows the refrigerator to be flush inside the wall, preserving the space inside the kitchen. It's quite tight in the kitchen. And that is the scope of the project. This is from the other side. Yes, that is the scope of this project. It's just a small, less than 5 square feet addition inside this house. This is the plan. So this is the new portion, and then this is the elevation from inside the kitchen looking at the refrigerator.
Board members?
When you look at the outside of the bump out, is there something that protects the roof of the bump out? I didn't quite understand how that works.
Yeah, there actually is. There's going to be a new roof constructed right here.
Over that little section.
Just like a little shed or a little.
Do you know if this is listed on the National Register?
The house itself is not listed in the National Register. I know that it was brought under review for a certain vintage of the house and a certain situation surrounding it, but it's not specifically listed under the house itself.
Has it been attributed to any particular architect's efforts?
Not besides Jonathan's efforts himself. I don't think it has. I know they bought it years and years ago and restored it.
Because it looks like one of the little houses out of one of the Alexander Jackson Downing books.
Oh, yeah.
And many of the houses along River Road, especially as you get closer to Montgomery Place, and there are some extant structures at Bard College that are in that same vernacular, making it an exceptional example of native Hudson Valley vernacular architecture.
I believe that you've also requested waiving of the public hearing. Is that correct?
Yes, when we did our pre-conference meeting, it was suggested to us that due to the limited scope of this project, that we might be able to waive the public hearings. So that was something I was going to ask. I'll bring that up.
Do you want to have discussion on that?
Well, first I'm going to ask if other planning board members have general comments they'd like to make. In the pre-application meeting, we did note, and I don't know which elevation it would be, that it does not project further toward the bridge approach road than the part of, keep going.
Yes, right here, that
Yeah,
it doesn't, this is the existing plan, it's located here. So
yeah.
it doesn't approach the side.
No other questions or comments from planning board members? All right, would you like to have a discussion about the advisability or our willingness to waive the public hearing?
Yes, personally, I agree with Jim's that, I think it does seem to have a very limited scope. I think it doesn't seem to have any immediate impact based on the current screening and just the size of the addition, the bump out. So I think if you want to, it's within your discretion, if you would like to waive the public hearing, that's certainly doable.
Does anyone feel that there's a need to continue and require a public hearing?
I hate to be a naysayer, but, I think this is one of those special little hidden gems that it would be worth knowing more about it. It is a minor change, and it's not the principal elevation. The building technically fronts on River Road, and it's not really visible from the public thoroughfare, from what these drawings show. But by waiving the public hearing, does that circumvent the need for site visit and?
No, you can still do a site visit. Any referrals to APAC or WAC would still be done. You just wouldn't have a public hearing. So you wouldn't
Okay.
have members of the public able to comment if they have any concerns.
Or
is the board.
continue our review until the next meeting?
Yes, I think there are definitely some referrals that need to be done, and site visits, so I wouldn't recommend it being approved, but if you'd like to waive the public hearing, that can certainly be done. You don't have to, it's within your discretion, but it does seem like a minor.
But from the point of view of the applicant, it isn't saving any time to forego the public hearing.
Not the way that the planning board typically does it. I know with for example, the zoning board usually has a public hearing and then would consider the resolution at the next meeting. I believe that you guys usually have you have the ability to do the public hearing and then the resolution if you would like to do that.
So, to be clear about the options, if we waive the public hearing, Jim has prepared the draft approval resolution that's in the packet.
With the exception that I do believe that it still needs to be referred to WAC because it is within the LWRP.
Well,
So-
then that precludes the ability.
Yes, I was just going to say that I know that Jim has it drafted as an approval. I wouldn't recommend approval because I think there are still outstanding referrals that need to be made.
Everybody clear on that?
So then why not have a public hearing?
Well, that's precisely the.
Yeah, I don't think there's a tangible difference in waiving the
Yeah,
public
with
hearing.
the exception
Still
that,
carry
like I
over.
said, if you just wouldn't have members of the public.
Okay. Anyone else? Well, then Kim, let's see what Jim, has he created two separate?
He has, yes.
I mean, we've had public hearings for heat pump installations. right now.
Oh, what would be driving that would be Rhinebeck. I don't know. Not to pick on you, but we know you're
It's the
very
historical
special,
like
and
that.
so you get special treatment. Fair, is that fair?
special.
Yes, I know. All right, so Kim, does that then take us to what would be, his first draft
Yes,
procedural
his first
resolution?
draft, it would be accepting the application and supporting documents as adequate for further review by the planning board. Classify the action as a type 2, similar to the last one is that it's additions to the house. Schedule a public hearing for September 18th at 6:15. Anyone want to do a field visit?
I
I'll
think
go.
Craig would like to go.
Yes, I would. What made you think that?
I would be happy to go with Craig.
Refer it to the CAB and refer it to the WAC. Refer it to PAPAC for review, refer it to the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development under 239N, and authorizes Jim to start on a draft public hearing, subject to change and modification.
Can we have a motion, please? Thank you, any second? Second. Thank you, Sharon, all those in favor? Opposed? Abstention? Okay, we'll be in touch with you about scheduling the site visit.
Okay, great, thank you.
You're very welcome. The third and last new application for this evening is Ricky Kopchansky, 2 Charles Street, for a site plan and special use permit.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Speaking of heat pumps, in Rhinebeck, specifically in Rhinebeck. I'm Warren Smith here with Richard Kopchansky, the proud owner of the building known as 2 Charles Street, although if you turn the corner, it has a Chatzel Avenue address, so it's a little confusing. And we were having a conversation earlier about Charles Street. It's one of the sort of mystery streets in Rhinebeck because Rhinebeck Road, Route 308, becomes Charles Street when it comes into the hamlet, and then when you get to the intersection, it jogs and becomes Kelly Street, and of course emerges at the far end of Morton Road. So it's one of those addresses that's really challenging for anybody with an app telling them what to do. But in any event, this is the 3-story brick building at the corner of Chatzel and Charles, and this is essentially a 1-story section of the building with a 2-story piece here with a gabled roof at the north end. And there's currently one heat pump, AC condenser unit on the roof on the backside, and Richard's proposing to add some to replace the window air conditioners in these upper floor apartments with a more central system. And this is just a mock-up rendering. These are pretty small units. They're a little less than 3 feet wide. They're 14 inches deep in terms of their projection from the wall, and about 22 inches high. So the truth is they may not even appear quite this large from the vantage point of the street. There's another image of the existing one in the back of the building. But this again is just essentially, this is an existing one. It's been there for a number of years. These will be closer to the actual wall of the 3-story element. But that's what this proposal is, to put some additional units up there to serve the upper floors. I would say they'll have minimal acoustic impact on the neighborhood, because obviously it's a commercial district within the hamlet, and they're very minimal visual impact as well. But because it is a hamlet and it's a heat pump, we obviously have to bring that to you.
Okay. You have Jim's comments in front of you. I don't think his comments raise anything in particular.
Yeah, I think he just said, being that it's in Rhinecliff, there might be some historic or visual considerations to take into account. I think that was said. So just principally aesthetic questions being raised. And I'm sure everyone's familiar with it, but this is just an existing shot of what it currently looks like.
Yeah, the closer you are, obviously, the less visible those units will be.
Planning board members. Comments?
Is it common ownership, the airspace in the building that's adjacent?
It's actually all, I mean, the building is connected, it's all one building, and it's all owned by Richard or an entity. Actually, it's Dick and Jane Enterprises, I think, that owns the building.
And does this pretty much cover it for the whole structure, or are there other units that might be applicable to different parts of the building?
We've owned it for about 10 years, and we've been trying to get it off oil. The main house is now on a propane system, a Navion system. There are these heat pumps in the store and in the 2 little offices. That's what that one little thing is right there.
Okay.
The only existing thing are the 2 apartments. So what we just want to finish it off and get the 2 apartments off oil and get those crazy window air conditioning units.
Understood, yeah. But there isn't like provision for refrigeration for the commercial space downstairs, or?
No, the commercial space is all set. They don't need anything else.
Okay.
What's the current size of the existing, this unit? Do you know the dimensions of this unit?
The unit that's there right now?
Yes.
It's very similar, just looking at it. I certainly wasn't able to measure it, but it's a little less than 3 feet, front to back. The depth is about roughly 14 inches and the height is about 2 feet. And that's a fairly standard size for units of that capacity.
And it's going to be for a total of how many units?
There are 2 existing units upstairs?
We're talking apartments?
Apartments.
Units, yes, there's two apartments.
I mean, the
One on each
How many-
floor.
how
the condensers though,
The
so.
condensers.
There's one in the back that you can't see, Billy, that was in that photograph, that's existing.
They're there. There's going to be 4 more, one for each unit. And there's 2 units in each apartment.
So it's a total of 4?
Total of 4 being
And you're
added.
removing the existing one?
No, the existing one is serving an existing
Oh,
space.
so it's
That's
just, you're
remaining.
just adding 4, not removing?
That's correct. That's right.
And they really could not be in the least conspicuous spot. They are, hidden as much as possible.
That's a great thing about those mini splits, is
Right.
that they can be favorably located.
Any board members?
The only thing I have to consider is just snow is going to be potentially a challenge for you, that part of the location. Just something, you'll have to, it's a maintenance item, but,
Snow?
yeah.
Well,
So I know
the
they're going to be
units are-
bracketed probably, right? They're going to be bracketed.
They're going to be up.
They're
off the
mounting
flat
blocks.
roof.
Yeah.
Mounting off the roof.
Yeah.
But
other
not
than
very
that,
high off the
They
roof.
significantly look significantly better than what it is. So
Yes. But not only that, it's for
It's more
heating as well.
efficient, significantly
It's for
efficient.
heating as well, so, yeah.
Anyone else? I believe we have a draft procedural resolution here.
Yes, we do. So this is for site plan special use permit for the condenser units. Accept the application and supporting documents as adequate for further review by the planning board. Classify the proposed action as type 2 action. I had recommended it be type 2 as construction of a non-residential structure, even though it's a mixed use, but that's less than 4,000 square feet of gross floor area. Schedule a public hearing for September 18th. I will get that at 6:15. Any board members would like to do a field visit on this?
I would like to make a site visit.
I'll go.
Michael, thank you. Who else? And Edna, thank you.
Refer this application to the CAB for review and written comments. Refer the application to the WAC for review and written comments based on consistencies with the LWRP. Refer the application to HAPAC for review and written comments. Refer to the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development pursuant to General Municipal Law 239N, and authorizes Jim to start working on a draft resolution subject to change and modifications.
May I have a motion?
So,
Second.
Thank you, Sean. Motion, second. Edna, all those in favor?
aye.
Any opposed? Abstention, the motion carries. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Good luck. We'll see you soon. We can now move into the public hearing portion of this evening's meeting. First, we will have Dana Poland, 21 Fleming Street for site plan and special use permit. Would like to come up and review for us. Wonderful. There you go. So if you'd just like to review for us the
Sure.
application.
Good evening, my name is Mike Gillespie. I'm the consultant engineer for the project. What's being proposed here is there is a small shed that exists to the rear of the property. That shed is proposed to be removed, and in its place, actually, it was just a hair smaller, a proposed urban studio. And they can certainly give you some background in terms of what's proposed and what the use is and all that kind of good stuff. The building, or the urban studio was moved a little bit since the last time you saw that. We now The existing shed is only 1 foot off the property line. We're now pulling it off to be 3 foot off the property line to the left. And also, it's kind of a little kitty corner there on the rear and side. It's going to be 3 foot up above as well. Okay. Based upon some of the comments that were brought out relative to the application last time, we added, effectively, for some of the potential runoff coming off the roof and so forth, we have some stone beds in order to just try to pick up some of that water and kind of knock it down. And we've shown our utility line locations as well as the geothermal lines or geothermal wells. So I think we hit most of the high parts as well as, certainly some of the comments. If you'd like to go ahead and talk about the studio itself.
Well, we did get through this last time, so it's an office, it's a DIY project, we're building from a kit. We did send in a picture, it's going to be the same color as the house, so we did send in a photo of the color, because it's not this color.
Yeah, I don't think I have that,
Oh, really?
that one. I think I
It's
just,
just a gray picture of the house.
yeah.
That's the old shed, which
Yeah,
has been
that's-
demolished. Oh, so this would be more recent material?
The only thing I have is, I didn't see any pictures of the colorized shed.
Stuff that I sent to Gretchen.
Yeah, this is the most recent thing I have. This is just the
Just that?
device. Yeah.
I know there was a specification on the plan, the colors.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Do
have
you
it.
have a printer of the color? You turned it in?
So the color was Benjamin Moore, Chelsea Gray.
Yeah, but we actually did a color photo to show it. Is that board? And then you can see the electrical is on the site plan. Not sure what else we need to add.
Is there an internal view, like, is it just an open square space, like?
It's an open square space, yeah. It's 9 by 10.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, I forgot if there is there heating, a heat pump, or?
There's going to be a mini split heat pump
Okay.
and two electrical outlets.
And the location of that condensing unit is going to be where?
On the north side.
It's indicated.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very small, but it's.
On the north
Oh,
side.
yeah. We call that on the
Let me just pull up, just hold on.
There's no water, correct?
No.
I just need to pull up my emails. One second.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, we find out.
I can try and find a picture of our house.
Oh.
I got it. I just needed to, just because I'm pulling up my email.
No, but the house looks nice.
Well, while we're looking at that, maybe what I'll do is ask Sharon and Michael who made the site visit to report, and we'll keep looking, but they were there, so maybe they would call the color of the house. So let's start with that.
I don't remember, but it was sort of gray and it's the big side of the shed, so
Yeah.
it went right in.
All right, you want to report on the site visit, what you saw?
Should I go first?
For the,
All right. When we went there, the existing shed is no longer there, so we can see the site exactly where it's going to go. And the property is fenced in, this whole back of it, very nicely landscaped, and a huge maple tree in the neighbor's property, covering the whole area. It's really quite remarkable. They do have stone along the fence. I feel if there was not any drainage problem to the neighbor in the previous structure, it won't be with this one either. Definitely taking that into account. I wish I could remember the clubhouse. It looked very nice. It's very subdued. It's by no means, not like some flashy purple or anything like that. So I don't see any problem at all with what we're planning to do here. I think it's very simple, just replacing what was already there, although I think they're taking into account any possibility of water and potential issues that might occur. I think that they try to take that into account.
Sharon, anything you'd like to add?
no, Michael covered it pretty good. we did show on the plans, and you told us where the electrical line is going to be. They're not going to interfere with anything. They keep the shed back from the fence, and so we'll be able to get around the fence. So, looks good.
Okay.
No, I did, looked at Gretchen's email. I didn't see any colors submitted with that.
Just a picture with your name on it, so.
Oh, the pictures in the email itself.
With also a printout.
I just have to go further now.
What a pretty gray. Isn't that a lovely gray?
And that's that was the sign for the shed.
The public hearing.
Right,
Yes.
right. Oh, there it is, yes, everything is properly documented. So your intention is to paint this shed to match the...
Yes.
And several neighbors had provided letters of support, had no objections of those who submitted.
Okay. Planning board members?
Seems like it's pretty secluded, and it would be hard to find this shed if you were looking for it. So
Yes,
I think it's a very low-key
Good place to hide.
Right. And I think, didn't you say that it's actually a smaller footprint than
Yes.
the previous shed?
it is.
You had asked about the size of the shed in Malden.
Yes.
Actually, that was 10 by 15. We did the research.
Oh, you did?
This is 10 by 9.
So.
All right.
So it's much smaller than that one.
You got Henry David Thoreau.
All right, well, that being said, is there anyone here from the public who wishes to make a comment on this application? Yes, Richard?
I love the idea you use of split units. That's really good. Rhinecliff, I find, is, well, we all know, it's made up of a lot of smaller houses. So it's not these big, giant houses that they're building up now, these big mansions or whatever. And so, and I've seen a lot of really creative uses of sheds, whether it's an old outhouse that's turned into a tool shed, or, you know, an old garage with a mother's apartment upstairs. I mean, this is a great use, I think, for you know, professional people coming up and getting out of the main house, which is relatively small. And it just, I think it's part of Rhinecliff. I think it's, and I think you're right, it's pretty secluded. So I think it's a great idea.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? If not, can I have a motion to close the public hearing? Thank you, Michael, second.
Second.
Thank you, Craig. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. We have an approval resolution.
Yes. So approval resolution, oh, sorry. It says the Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board hereby acts as follows on the application for Dana Tolan for site plan and special use permit under Town Code, Chapter 125, Section 125-65, and Section 125-72, respectively for construction of a detached office structure at 21 Corning Street within the RCH zoning district and RCO Rhinecliff overlay. Reaffirms that the proposed action is type 2 seeker for which planning and environmental quality review is precluded. Based upon submitted information, reviews undertaken, including site visit report from planning board members, finds that the proposed work is consistent with the objectives and regulations of Chapter 125. With respect to the application for special use permit to construct new parking spaces, that doesn't seem right. I would change that to say the office space, the office space. Proposed the proposed work and intended use to be consistent with the general standards for special use permits set forth in the Town Code, Chapter 125, Section 125-67, grants the requested special use permit conditional upon receipt of site plan approval from the planning board. With respect to the application for site plan approval, finds the proposed work and intended use to be consistent with Town Code, Chapter 125, Section 125-75, and approves the application inclusive of the application materials and site plans by MSB and Associates with the revised revision date of August 7, 2023. Authorizes planning board chair to stamp and sign the above cited site plan upon the applicant's satisfaction of the below conditions and or requirements within 6 calendar months of the adoption of this resolution. 1, submission of the above cited site plan in the form and number specified within Town Code Chapter 125, Section 125-78B, except as may be modified as to lesser numbers by the Chair in consideration of filing and distribution requirements, and including thereon all required stamps, seals, and certifications. 2, payment of any outstanding fees and or reimbursable amounts due to the Town of Rhinebeck related to the review and processing of applications subject to this resolution. 3, receipt of all approvals, authorizations, and certifications required herein, or from any town, county, state, and/or agency as required to undertake the proposed action. In taking this action, the planning board further authorizes the town zoning enforcement officer / zoning administrator and/or building inspector to issue any required permits for the proposed use upon their determination that both the terms of this resolution and all applicable codes, laws, rules, and regulations, including but not limited to provision of the New York State Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Code within the purview of the ZEO/ZA and building inspector have been satisfied. And no later than 2 weeks prior to 6 months beyond the date of application, and upon specific written request from the applicant, time extension may be made pursuant to section 125-78D2.
Can I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor, or I'll pull the board, let me see. Sharon? Aye. Michael?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Craig?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Thank you very much.
vote aye.
And you vote aye. I'm used to Jim being there. I apologize. The motion carries. Thank you very much. Enjoy your new show.
Good luck.
Next up this evening, Salisbury Steak LLC, 50 Salisbury Turnpike, site plan and special use permit. Good evening.
I'm Susan C. I'm the owner of the Salisbury property. What we'd like to do is, I guess I'll show you.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out the best. Let's start off with this one. Do you want to have a picture of the fence too?
Sure. That'd be great.
Okay, sure. This is in the north, let's see. The north, okay, so that's the northwest. This is the north property. We have an 8-foot high deer fence installed, and we would like to get a special permit to make it
8 feet.
8 feet, yes. Thank you. And we do have a letter from the county saying that it is not in the right-of-way of the Route 52 there. The fence is over locust posts, natural, and very transparent. So I think it has a very low visual impact. Are there any questions about the fence? Nancy?
Let's start. I don't believe Jim has any new comments in his.
No, I don't believe so. I think last time I was just making sure that DOT signed off on it, which they did. And I don't think we had any. No new comments.
Who did the site visit? Right.
I did a site visit, and the fence has already been constructed, so really we're just ratifying the special use permit that's required for this. It is quite close to the road, but it is, as Sue mentioned, very transparent. It does incorporate some rustic materials and in a way that's not visually obtrusive. That front section that you see immediately from the road is an orchard where I believe you're trying to cultivate some fruit-bearing trees, and the problem of deer browsing in that area is a real challenge for getting that functioning. I did a little bit of poking around and Cornell Extension does recommend for a large garden such as this, a fence as high as 8 feet, because the deer will clear the shorter fences unless there are other obstacles in the way. But I don't think any of that was considered, like a lower fence, like a 4-foot fence.
Not for
set
deer.
a few feet off.
That would be-
Well, set a few feet off from maybe a 6-foot fence that would be transparent so that they would not have a landing zone or a launching zone.
I didn't think of that.
That was not there, okay. It seems to have been competently installed. It doesn't look sloppy or untidy. And the grid pattern is quite large. It's like a 6-inch wire grid. So it's about as clandestine a fence as one can imagine. And yeah, I think the only other concern would be the encroachment on the right-of-way, which it doesn't seem to do.
Which we never sign off on. Okay. Planning board members. Did someone go with you, or?
I was there with Joe Kupiak from the CAB,
And we
and I
already,
think Joe submitted a letter.
On that? Okay, did you note any concerns? Anyone else?
I think just to try and speak to what Craig has said, I think we need to recognize in this town that gardeners need protection from deer. And an 8-foot fence, I've actually had deer clear an 8-foot fence if they get enough of a running start. They can probably clear 10 feet. So it's sort of, obstacle course is a good idea. But if you're a serious gardener, and fruit trees that kill because right down to the ground, I think we need to perhaps talk to our town board about amending our zoning. Because from a gardener's standpoint, you can put in a nice garden and you're going to lose it if you don't fence it in. You can sprays with some effect. A lot of people don't really want to shoot them during hunting season. And it's another one of those problems. If you look at one of the pictures that you had of this earlier, going along the road, you could see the utility poles and the wires and all that stuff. They're not exactly attractive, but they're something that's a necessity of our times and what we use. If you're a serious gardener, you need to be able to protect your property from the white-tailed deer, or you're basically not going to have a garden.
very true. Anyone else?
It does say, the only part that says CAB has a concern as the fence is very visible from the road.
Thank you. If there's nothing else from the planning board, is there anyone here from the public wishing to? Richard. It's not right.
I'm here for Rhinebeck.
He's unburdening himself tonight.
Apparently.
So, yeah, I just wanted to say, you know, there could be some really obnoxious fences out there, and we've all seen them, and they're just not what Sue did out there. I go by it quite a bit to the Dutchess Botanical Gardens, and I have a friend who has some property on Enterprise Road. You hardly see it. And if you do, it just looks as if it's always been there with the old cedar things that she did and everything. And I think it's a fence well done.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. And we have a whole resolution draft.
Yep. So it says, Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board hereby acts as follows on the application by Salisbury State LLC site plan and special use permit under Town Code Chapter 125, Section 125-65, and Section 125-72, respectively for installation of a fence at 50 Salisbury Turnpike within the RC5 zoning district. Reaffirms the proposed action as type 2, seeker for which coordinated environmental quality review is precluded. Based upon submitted information and reviews undertaken, including site visit reports from planning board members, finds that the proposed work is consistent with the objectives and regulations of Chapter 125. This again says parking spaces, so with respect to the application for special use permit to construct a fence, finds the proposed work and intended use to be consistent with the general standards for special use permits set forth in the Town Code Chapter 125, Section 125-67. Grants the requested special use permit conditional upon completed site plan approval by the planning board. With respect to the application for site plan approval, finds the proposed work and intended use to be consistent with Town Code Chapter 125, Section 125-75, approves the application inclusive of the application materials and site plan by Robert L. Campbell, LS. Is that who did the? Yes, okay, sorry, I didn't see that. Revised May 23rd, 2023. Authorizes planning board chair to stamp and sign the above cited site plan upon the applicant's satisfaction of the below conditions and are required within 6 months the adoption of this resolution. 1, submission of the above cited site plan in the form and number specified within Town Code Chapter 125, Section 125-78B, except as may be modified to a lesser number by the chair in consideration of filing and distribution requirements, and including thereon all required stamps, seals, and certifications. 2, payments of any outstanding fees and/or reimbursable amounts due to the town of Rhinebeck related to the review and processing of the applications. 3, receipt of all approvals, authorizations, and certifications required herein from any town, county, state, or other agency as required. In taking this action, planning board authorizes the town zoning enforcement officer and/or building inspector to issue any required permit for the proposed use upon their determination that both the terms of this resolution and all other applicable codes, laws, rules, and regulations, including but not limited to the New York State Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Codes, have been satisfied. No later than 2 weeks prior to 6 months beyond the date of adoption, and upon specific written request by the applicant, a time extension may be granted.
Okay, motion to close the public hearing.
So,
Motion. Seconded, all those in favor?
aye.
Could I have a motion to approve the draft approval resolution?
Second.
I'll poll the board. Craig?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Michael? Sharon? And I vote aye. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you. Sue will remain here to speak to Girl Next Door LLC, 19 Grinnell Street, site plan and special use permit. Yes.
Another heat pump, and
Another one.
the Rhinebeck is going to be very green. So you have some photos. This is before the siding now, but it will show you approximate.
Yeah.
Oh, it's right there.
There's a little button right here.
So, let's see, that's the front of the house facing Grinnell Street. There's one on this north side of the house, and one on the, behind this vegetation on the south side, and 2 in the rear, which are visible here. Oh, that's the side. That's the south side, where the old oil tank was. And there's another picture of the back. This is the north side location. Oh, this is the back side location. So the backside is only visible from another building on the property that belongs to you as well. And the south side is not visible from my house, because of vegetation. So possibly the only visible part would be on the north side, but it's also obscured by vegetation. And I do have a picture of the condenser, if you wanted to see it. I know you asked for it last time.
Oh, I love these things.
Any more members? I don't believe Jim had any additional comments in his meeting notes.
No, he just said that, again, because it's in Rhinebeck, visual or aesthetics might be the greatest consideration and concerns.
Did we receive comments from HAPAC or CAB? From NICE? Planning board members? Edna and I made a site visit, so I'll defer to Edna and Joanna.
So you know where the location of these is going to be, and the units we were told are beige. And there's piping that will emanate from the unit into the house. The house is now sided with a dark gray siding, and whatever that piping is, it will match the gray of the siding. I agree that they will not be very visible at all. The one on the north side, from a certain perspective on the street, you might see until the foliage grows a bit taller.
Right, I wouldn't have much to add. The only possible place that one of these can be seen is slightly from the north. The others are really quite invisible from the street, from pretty much any angle. I don't have anything else to add. It's a pretty sensible approach to this project. Anyone else wishing to comment?
I want to add that it's very reassuring that people are making this concentrated effort to move away from fossil fuels. And, we do a pretty good job of generating renewables in this area, and that's only expected to increase. So I hope everyone will advocate for that in other realms so that these installations become that much more green and efficient.
Is there anyone here from the public? Yes.
I'm sorry, I really, only because, I have to say, this is a great
Because you have
job.
nothing else to do this evening?
No. This is really great. We get into these units in Rhinecliff. They're like three.
Are you buying them in bulk?
No, I wish I could.
You might want
Wish
to
I
start
could.
something down there.
But it's really a wonderful thing. I mean, even the guys putting in the shed behind their house, they're going to have one of these units. But think about what we're doing. It's a 3-foot unit by 14 inches. And look what's happening. We're getting rid of that.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody ever even thought about that, right? I mean, this is going to be a nice little unit against the building, and we're getting rid of a 8-foot, 6-foot, whatever thing is. It's like crazy that we're talking this much about it. But I think it's a good idea, Sue.
Thank you.
Can anyone top that? There really isn't much public left and stuff. Anyway, thank you, Richard. If there are no other public comments, could I have a motion to close the public?
So moved.
Thank you, Michael. Second, Sharon. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, the motion carries, and we'll look at the draft approval resolution.
Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board hereby acts as follows on the application by Girl Next Door LLC for site plan and special use permits under Town Code, Chapter 125, Section 125-65, and Section 125-72, respectively for installing heat pumps at 19 Brunel Street within the RCH and RCO zoning districts. Reaffirms the proposed action as type 2 seeker, for which coordinated environmental quality review is concluded based upon submitted information and reviews undertaken, including site visit report from planning board members, finds that the proposed work consistent with the objectives and regulations of chapter 125. With respect to the application for special use permit to install heat pumps, finds the proposed work and intended use to be consistent with the general standards for special use permits set forth in Town Code Chapter 125, Section 125-67, and grants a special use. Requesting special use permits conditional upon receipt of site plan approval by the planning board. With respect to the application for site plan approval, finds proposed work intended use to be consistent with Town Code Chapter 125, Section 125-75, and approves the application inclusive of the application materials and site plan by Robert L. Campbell, L.S., dated May 30th, 2023. Authorize the planning board chair to stamp and sign the above site plan upon the applicant's satisfaction with below conditions and the requirement within 6 calendar months of the adoption of this resolution. 1, submission of the above cited site plan in the form and number specified within the town code. Chapter 125, section 125-78B, except as may be modified as to lesser number by the chair in consideration of filing and distribution requirements, and including thereon all required stamps, seals, and certifications. 2, payment of any outstanding fees and/or reimbursable amounts due to the town of Rhinebeck related to review and processing of applications subject to this resolution. 3, receipt of all approvals, authorizations, and certifications required herein, or from any town, county, state, or other agencies as required. In taking this action, planning board further authorizes the town zoning enforcement officer and/or building inspector to issue any required permits for the proposed use upon their determination that both the terms of this resolution and all other applicable codes, laws, rules, and regulations, including but not limited to the provisions of the New York State Uniform Fire Prevention and Building Codes within the purview of the zoning enforcement officer, zoning administrator, and/or building inspector have been satisfied no later than 2 weeks prior to the 6 months beyond the date of the adoption of this resolution, and upon specific written request by the applicant, time extension may be granted.
Can I have a motion to accept the draft approval resolution? Thank you, Michael. Second?
Second.
Thank you, Sharon. I'll call the board. Craig?
Aye.
Edna?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Sharon?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, the last public hearing for this evening in wireless edge Verizon, 3866 Route 9G, site plan special use permit for somehow. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Robert Corioso with the law firm of Snyder and Snyder on behalf of the applicants Wireless Edge and Verizon Wireless. I'm joined by Mr. John Arthur, president of Wireless Edge, and Mr. Martin Lavin from C-Square Networks. He's our expert radio frequency engineer as well. Thank you. So since the last meeting, we did submit a couple additional pieces of documentation based on our discussion. We did submit an actual FAA determination. The tower would not require any type of lighting on the tower. We submitted a report in letter form from Brendan Hennessy of Verizon Wireless detailing the limitations of certain alternative designs from an engineering standpoint. We submitted sight lines from our engineer and a review in response to Mr. James's report. The sight lines showed that the facility itself, including the fence, would not be visible from the road given its location tucked away on the edge of the woods. Nevertheless, based on our comments, we did submit a revised site plan. We included 44 additional green giant plantings, both along Route 9G, up the access road, and then around the facility. And we finally submitted a letter from Wireless Edge to AT&T offering co-location on the facility. As we previously mentioned, we've designed the facility both on the tower and at the base for future co-location. I know that there was a comment last time acknowledging the fact that AT&T had filed an application in Red Hook. We did take a look at that application. First and foremost, AT&T's put that application on hold. They wrote a letter to Red Hook because apparently there was a notice of violation. In any event, that application required an amendment of a use variance based on zoning officer's interpretation. That location is approximately 46 feet lower in ground elevation. That location is in a wetland, so there's wetland disturbance. We are not in a wetland of any sort. That application is on a 3-acre parcel. We're on a 37-acre parcel. It's on a 3-acre parcel that requires heavy tree removal. We have, I think, 3 trees we're proposing to remove. That location, the AT&T location, is in the local waterfront redevelopment area, which we are not in this town. That location does not meet the setbacks because it's on a small parcel. There's a 150-foot setback, and they're only 66 feet away, so they need a setback variance. You recall your setback is much greater. Your setback is 250 feet from the closest property line. We meet that on all sides. We also meet the special 500-foot residential setback. But again, that application has been suspended by AT&T. Just wanted to mention that we did look at that application for purposes of taking a look at its feasibility, which we don't believe it is feasible, but also to explain why we did specifically reach out to AT&T. In their application, their number one alternative location was our parcel. They actually said that the property owner at the time wasn't interested. Well, obviously, he is interested. Mr. Arthur has been able to obtain, at least from whom we have this application. So If AT&T is interested, we're certainly happy to have them join the application or co-locate in the future. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the board may have tonight. I know it's a continued public hearing.
Kim, you want?
So we had Ron, great, John, would you like to?
Yeah, I'll bring the board through
Okay.
the additional developments. So we have the submission that Mr. Gaudioso just described. We also, so as you may recall from the last meeting, there's an issue about whether a height variance is required for this application. We had George James's office use LiDAR data to calculate the average tree canopy height within 300 feet of the site, and that number comes out to around 61 feet. And that report was given to the zoning enforcement officer, and we're expecting a determination from Brian any day. I checked in with Brian by phone today. I wasn't able to reach him, but the last time I spoke with him, it sounded like something would be coming soon. There was mention last time we talked about archaeological review. Melody, you had asked me about that and whether it had been done. I didn't find anything in the file, and maybe Robert can speak to that.
No, we submitted a full archaeological phase 1, and we also submitted SHPO's concurrence that there were no archaeological.
Would that be in the initial packet that came in?
I believe it was in the second package that we submitted.
Okay. If you could just email me
Sure.
the date of the submission, then I'll send that along, and we'll take a look at that again, just to verify. Also, shortly, you'll be needing to make your determination of significance under seeker. So I brought tonight a copy of the short environmental assessment form that's been submitted by the applicant, and there's a copy of part 2 and 3 of the short EAF on top of that. So for next meeting, I would suggest that in between now and the next meeting, you should take a look at part 2 of the EAF and gather your thoughts so that you're prepared to discuss the EAF part 2 at the next meeting. There's a report so the planning board's hired its own radio frequency engineer, Ronald Grafe, and last week I circulated a report from Mr. Grafe. He reviewed the application. He has some suggestions. I don't know if you've had a chance to read it. I can take you through the key points of the suggestions if you wish. He indicated that on figure 3, the search ring should be redone and presented on 7.5-minute USGS topo. Figure 4, the map showing 2-mile radius, he's asking that it be redone. He found it not to be understandable in its present state. The demonstration of lack of capacity, he says, is flawed because it only considers 2 frequency bands, 700 and 2100, and that to justify the need for capacity, the analysis should include all 4 frequencies. The coverage maps, he said, should focus on this geographic area and contain more detail. He's also asking that the coverage maps be presented on 7.5-minute USGS topo. He said that that's something that's important to determining the height necessity. He's asking that the coverage maps be revised with a greater zoom in and to demonstrate coverage for all frequencies at alternate heights of 146 feet, 136 feet, 126 feet, and 100 feet for signal strengths of 85, 95, and 105. He has some other comments at the end of the report, but those are the key elements of his report. And I think that brings everything up to date. The only other thing I would say is that the board had inquired about, had asked the applicant about alternate designs. That's not in the August 4 packet. There is a letter from Verizon about how camouflaged or designs with the antennas inside structures don't work as well for the carriers, but as you know, the zoning law requires camouflaging, so I think we're going to have to continue to have that dialogue. Thanks.
Planning board members. I know it's a lot to digest. Any comments?
Well, I have a question for the applicant, and that is, the board has asked for alternative designs, and are you expecting to present those?
At this stage, what we did is we explained the alternatives that have been discussed. Were not feasible from Verizon Wireless. We have our expert here tonight if you have any questions about that determination from an engineering standpoint. So if there were other alternatives that the board had in mind other than, I think, some of the ones that were shown by Mr. James last time, we'd be happy to discuss them as alternatives, but we believe that the tree does meet the code. It's very specific as far as, what self-design is the tree, so we think we did provide that.
Did you, have you looked at and identified any other alternatives? Or are you simply saying this is your choice and that's it?
At this stage, the application is for the tree, and the alternatives that were discussed were not feasible as we
The ones
documented.
we presented to you?
Correct.
I'm asking if you did additional homework to identify any others on your own.
Well, I think we talked about last time things like silos, which would be completely much larger than the tree as far as the size and intrusiveness and things of that nature. So we think that out of the alternatives, that the tree is really the only feasible design.
I think we're going to have a very long discussion then on the meaning of camouflaging or obscuring a structure such as this. That obscures nothing, it draws your attention to its presence, whereas something without those alleged branches, whatever, would be less visible. Just as you were discussing that fence earlier on Salisbury Turnpike. It was done with a locust post and a very wide mesh on it to make it as invisible as possible. There is nothing invisible about that thing sticking up in the middle of basically a meadow area. That does not obscure, it does not camouflage, it does not meet, in my opinion, and I'm more than willing to have this discussion as long as we have to, our requirements in our zoning law to camouflage this particular use. There's no way in the world that belongs in Rhinebeck.
There are other towers around that use coverings that streamline the appearance of the tower, and apparently they work. I mean, they don't necessarily use metal coverings, they use other materials.
Sure.
So why is it that you're unable to do that when we're seeing other towers use?
Sure. If I could have Mr. Lavin come up, I think he, from a technical standpoint, could probably explain the change in technology better than I can. So, Martin, if you could come up and maybe speak to that issue.
I just want to make, and I'm not a techno wizard, so I would say that up front. But I just want to clarify that the issue we're raising is not necessarily a technology issue, it's an aesthetic issue. And I want to be clear that we're working that into the discussion. I don't want to hear necessarily, as I said, I'm not an expert, I leave it to others to be technological experts. But I just want to reinforce the issue is an aesthetic issue.
Sure, and it has to still work from a technology
I
standpoint. So
understand that, but I'm reinforcing Edna's point that there are other ways that it's been done, so I don't think we're reinventing the wheel here.
This is Kurt Systems on behalf of Verizon. The main issue is there are certain towers out there with enclosures, flagpoles, things of that nature. As we've moved forward, we've got more and more frequencies all the time. We started out with just 850 back originally. Then we had PCS. Now we have 700. Some carriers have 600 megahertz, 1900, 2100, 2300 megahertz, and all these things start to create more and more problems when they're crammed inside of one of those flagpoles. When it's just one set of frequencies, it's relatively easy. Even two is manageable. And also the data rates have gone so high that some of the things that multiple frequencies would do when they're crammed into that pole were not a problem. But now we're going 1,000 times faster in data than we did originally back in the days of CDMA, the first digital data.
How many frequencies are we looking at today in this tower?
For this tower, we have 700, 850, 1900, 2100. I think we've got C-band, which is 3500. So we're looking at least 5 different frequencies, and there are more coming.
And there's no other towers that provide an alternative for 5 bands?
I'm sorry?
There's no other tower that provides an alternative for 5 bands?
Verizon is finding out as we're...
Yes or no?
It's a yes or no. Is there other alternative towers that can house and meet the technology needs for 5 bands?
Between the tree and an open monopole, there's no branches right now, really.
Well, we haven't seen an open monopole with no branches, have we? As an
It would be the
alternative?
same tower with all the branches raised.
It's the same thing without branches.
Well, what? But it has no branches. I mean, it just seems that you're talking technologically about things getting bigger and more complicated, but it looks to me like we're reverting to the most primitive form of pole that we've been objecting to for years, not just us personally, but many people. When you go into the community and you say, oh, this is what it's going to look like, the reaction is, you've got to be kidding me.
I want to be clear, is this 5 different frequencies, each for 4 different carriers?
Just for Verizon. And some of the other carriers will have even more. AT&T would bring in 2,300. T-Mobile would have 600. Dish would have 600.
Do you have deals with those guys? All of the others?
No.
So we don't really know what we're talking about.
Well, he was just answering the question.
Okay, but I'm just processing all the information as it's coming in.
The question is, let's just be hypothetical. This, we're going forward. When they add additional tenants and everything else, that's already included in this, so there's nothing coming back in front of us. Is that true?
I don't know.
Too late.
I was going to allow him to speak first.
Well, so they currently have, I believe, 5 providers provided on here. They can always come back for additional heights under the Middle Class Tax Relief Act, which is also called the Spectrum Act. They can I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I believe that they could come back for an additional 10% of the height, I believe. So I'm just saying,
So the
there's always a
application's for 5.
possibility. The application, I believe, has 5. 1, 2.
We're now not talking about 155 feet, but 170 feet, would it be?
Hold on, that's not accurate. So this application is strictly for Verizon Wireless. Okay? And what we show here is where Verizon Wireless is located. Your code requires that we build a facility for co-location for the future. There are currently 3 other major carriers in the area that are licensed. AT&T, T-Mobile, who merged with Sprint, who had merged with Nextel. So it's just T-Mobile and Dish Wireless. So that's 3 additional carriers. And what we've shown is that structurally, we will build the tower and structurally be able to support additional antennas with 1, 2, 3, 4 additional carriers. So we'll put the money into the tower that the additional carriers can come in and not raise the height and go below the height of Verizon Wireless. We also designed the base of the facility big enough so that way their equipment can fit in the base of the facility without expanding the base of the facility. So we've, based on your code, redesigned the tower and the base of the facility to handle those other carriers.
Okay, I think the code only permits 70 feet, so just...
Well, what the code says specifically is the code says that the one tower has to be stealth, and a stealth tower may not be over 70 feet. So, and what it specifically says is that the monopole design is the #1 preferred design. So it's camouflage by design. In open and wooded areas, and this is a quote, communication facilities and towers shall be camouflaged to resemble or mimic a native coniferous species of tree, or by other means such as such as construction of a silo, which I believe we discussed and is actually a picture in the code, a flagpole, a clock tower, a bell tower, a cross tower, a steeple, or other innovative replication of a structure that would be consistent with the character of the community as determined by the planning board. So what we looked at was Mr. James's pictures last time. We talked about the enclosed, and I believe you had sent some photographs, which we ultimately received through council. Those photographs included a smokestack at the old Yankee Stadium, some things that were renderings that I don't believe actually exist, and then something else which certainly wasn't anything of this size. It looked more like a small cell that you would have in a more industrial area. So my point is, just to answer your question, is that we have a determination from the building inspector that did not pull out the need for height variance. If the zoning officer determines we need a height variance, we are more than entitled to go seek the height variance under the public utility exception and under federal law. We haven't gotten that direction yet.
Did you complete the reading of that paragraph? Or does the paragraph end with a statement about the 70-foot height?
Well, it goes on to say that it's limited to 70 feet. The paragraph before that has a height of no more than 10 feet above the average tree canopy within 300 feet of the facility. With all that said, federal law is very clear that a local municipality may not prohibit service. And what the case law says is that a local municipality will prohibit service if it materially inhibited an applicant, which is a wireless communication provider like Verizon Wireless, from providing their services. Okay. So if the zoning code could have many, many different provisions, we always have the ability to go seek whatever type of variance we may need under both the zoning code, which New York State public utility law applies, so it's not the typical variance standard, and also federal law applies. But we're nowhere near that. We haven't gotten the building inspector's determination yet.
So is your position that the 70-foot height would be a prohibition? Or is that permitting a 70-foot height, but not anything greater?
I think if the board denied our application based on what we ultimately submit and what we have submitted, I believe it would be a prohibition.
Okay. And I think, isn't there some language in the Telecommunications Act that says that the whatever provisions that are restricting the construction have to be clearly articulated and publicly.
You do, and also what the applicant is entitled to close the gap in coverage, but they're not entitled under the federal law to get the maximum amount of utility.
The highest and best use.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
that was my understanding as well.
I think the law has changed since 2018, but I'm not here to debate that tonight. I mean, I think if we need a height variance, we'll make our application for the height variance and we'll support it. What I think the bigger issue is, if the board believes there's a better alternative design, we're happy to look at it. We have to be able to make sure that it's permitted by our landlord, we have to make sure it works from a technological standpoint, and we have to make sure it works aesthetically from your standpoint. We're happy to have that discussion.
I'm just not sure it's our job to find that alternative for you.
I think it's the board's job to make a decision in terms of what's being proposed about the provision that Mr. Gaudioso read from. It says that it has to be consistent with the character of the community as determined by the planning board.
I do have a question. As you're reading the requirement within zoning about camouflaging, it would have to resemble a native tree species native to this area. And I'd just like to know exactly what tree species you believe this is that's native to this area.
Well, the design is based on a white pine, and I understand that it is taller, obviously.
The white pines have rounded heads, and if they're not like a spruce tree or a Doug fir or a sequoia or a redwood, that is not a white pine. Not
If it
even
were,
close.
would you be happy with
So I think that saying that that would be something that our zoning law requires is totally erroneous. It is not anywhere near resembling a native species other than Dutchess County.
I think comment from your fellow board members is appropriate in that if we worked on the design of the branches and the design to make it more compatible with a native species, would that be something the board would want to see and be open to reviewing? If the answer is no, if the answer is that we don't want a tree in this location of this size,
The answer is you don't want to have to do that. If you want to try to make a white pine of 150 feet, the size of the materials you have to use will probably make it very difficult structurally to put the thing up and hope it doesn't blow down in a storm. You don't want to do that.
May I say something? I think one of the designs that we sent over by email, forgive my faulty drawing, but the idea of one of the designs was that the components are covered with a material that does not interfere with wavelengths, so that the entire structure is simplified, it is streamlined.
yes, we understood that, and I think what Mr. Hennessy's report, and what Martin was trying to explain, is that when you have very little equipment in the old style towers, that was something that could be somewhat feasibly accomplished. There were fake flagpoles, for example.
Now, this is not putting the materials in the hole.
Mhm.
It is basically covering your equipment, each of the pieces of equipment. That's
So-
all it's doing.
So we have looked at that specifically, and there are two main problems. One, the higher frequencies that carriers are using now, specifically Verizon Wireless, that covering, even though it is quote-unquote RF transparent, it still interferes with the signal. Okay, that's the first problem. That's in Mr. Hennessy's report. The second problem is that it requires, we have equipment that's not just the antennas. We have equipment that's on the tower that goes behind the antennas that generates heat. And when you enclose it in this type of structure, it creates a heat problem, and then the equipment malfunctions. So those are the problems that
To be perforated, so it doesn't have to hold heat. There are possibilities here that I feel aren't being adequately explored.
John, Kim, where do we go from here?
Well, my suggestion is to keep the public hearing open. I think the board should ask the applicant to respond to the comments that have been made by Mr. Gray. We'll have to get back to him, and we'll need his assistance in making decisions about whether the applicant's made its case on coverage and at the height that's being requested. And I would ask the applicant once again to propose some other alternatives if they choose not to. I would ask them to specify that for the record, and then we'll have to see where the board wants to go after that.
And do we have a consultant who can review these comments about the impossibility of
Yes, we
some of the
can,
things
we'll
that
ask
we're
Mr.
asking?
Grafe to weigh in on that, and I'm hoping, he's out of the country right now, but I'm hoping to arrange to have him available to appear by Zoom at the next planning board meeting.
Planning board members, are you in concurrence with the
That sounds like a good course of action.
course of action as outlined? Yes?
Oh, yeah. I was just going to ask one more question if there's
Absolutely.
time. Is there, within the application, a full inventory of existing towers within the limits of the town? Because I know that there was a tower mentioned that was a Spectrum Tower that's over by the woods.
I think if you look at the original RF report that we submitted, it has all the surrounding sites, including the neighboring jurisdictions.
All the towers and all the sites in there, there's capacities to handle.
They show exactly the overcapacity of the two closest sites that are the main problem, and that shows the other coverage from the other surrounding sites as well. And that's in the RF.
All right.
The only other thing is, I believe you had extended the shot clock until today,
Correct.
the August meeting. We obviously are still continuing the public hearing, and we have, we have outstanding questions to you regarding the RF and the alternative designs. I believe you extend it to the October meeting.
And what date is the October meeting?
I believe it was, we're on the second,
16th?
The 16th, right? October 16th?
Yeah.
We would mutually agree if we'd extend it to October
Thanks very
16th.
much.
Thank you.
All right, so we will follow up with the recommendations from council. I think it's clear if you have any clarity that you need beyond that, please speak with John.
I appreciate it.
And we'll, I'll accept the motion. Doesn't look like there's anyone here in the public wishing to comment, so I'll take a motion to continue the public hearing. We're continuing the public hearing to September 16th and the shot clock. September 18th.
Oh, are we continuing?
What, where are we
So,
going? I thought it was-
I think we come back in September, assuming we have something.
September,
Yeah,
correct.
the shot clock is extended
So,
to the
right,
8th.
the shot clock till October 16th, the public hearing 1
18th.
month to September 18th. Okay. May I have that motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Michael. Second.
I second it.
Thank you, Agnes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions. Thank you very much.
Have a nice day. Thank you.
I think we have one, I see something here, I don't believe it was on the agenda, but we have before you a resolution of the town of Rhinebeck Planning Board.
John passed that over.
Right. John, Kim, would you like to just briefly review that? Sure.
Yeah.
Stop
You want me
this?
to do that? So,
Do you want me to address it?
No.
No. So the board's aware of the fact that this matter regards the Locust Hill Workforce Housing Project. And the planning board is aware of the fact that the town board has circulated for lead agency because this application requires both site plan approval but also an amendment to the town of Rhinebeck zoning law. So the circulation was made, the board as an involved agency that has approval authority over site plans. This board received circulation from the town board. I believe discussion was had at the last meeting about whether the planning board wanted to be lead agency on this project, and that the board decided to consent to the town board being lead agency. So this resolution just traces that history and authorizes Melody as the chair to sign the consent to the town board being lead agency on the circulation letter and directing Gretchen to send a copy of the resolution to the town board.
Are we clear?
I do have a question. This basically is just responding to the request to be lead agency, correct?
Say again,
This is
Mike.
basically a resolution acknowledging that the planning board is, acknowledging that the town board is best qualified to be lead agency.
It's not even saying that, it's just consenting to the, what the resolution says is that the town board has the great, normally under seeker, the agency that has the greatest scope of approval authority is usually the lead agency. The resolution says that the town board has the greatest scope of approval authority in this case because it involves approval of the conceptual plan and also an amendment to the zoning law. And so this board is just merely saying that it consents to the town board acting as lead agency.
I guess my question is, this is basically zoning amendment, the zoning law, creating a zoning district where this can take place, and basically creating criteria such as the special use permit requirements for this particular use. I don't see that the planning board has any site plan approval regarding this particular thing because the zoning district doesn't exist. The specific use doesn't yet exist. I mean,
Well,
we definitely
exist.
have an advisory capacity under Article 12, but we do not have site plan approval of something that at this point does not exist.
Well, you have an advisory capacity, that's listed in the resolution
Yes,
as
it
well.
is.
And but I believe that, I don't believe that this project can be approved if the planning board doesn't approve the site.
But the site plan itself doesn't yet exist. The existence of it doesn't exist. The
I
site
understand
plan
that, I understand your
doesn't exist.
objections to that, but this statute is structured a little bit like planned unit developments, where the legislative authority approves the conceptual plan and then sends it to a planning board for site plan approval, and then If there's site plan approval contingent upon a zoning change, then the town board takes the legislative act of making the zoning change. It is something that's been done before, not here, but for years with planned unit developments.
But this is more than a conceptual, whatever.
Well, it's more than a conceptual plan because it's the seeker review that's being done for the zoning amendment and for the project is being done at the same time. It's similar to what the village is doing with Mulberry Street redevelopment.
Does this make us an involved agency or an interested agency?
Well, you're an involved agency, in my opinion, you are an involved agency because of your participation. It doesn't make you anything, it's simply consenting to the town board acting as lead agency. If you don't pass the resolution and 30 days pass without an answer, you're deemed to have consented to the town board being the lead agency.
Well, I'm certainly not going to ask the other planning board members to not vote what they want. I'm simply going to abstain because I strongly object to asking the planning board saying we have an involved agency authority here over site plan approval for something in a zoning district that doesn't even exist at this point in time.
Understood.
I think this is, John, I think it's asinine, but that's the
I
way
think
the town
you
wants to go
made your
forward.
feelings
Get
clear
vote
at the
for it.
last meeting.
I believe I did.
Yep.
So I'm simply going to abstain and shut up.
It's my feeling that this is a furtherance of putting a square peg into a round hole. I really appreciate the aims of this, but it seems like this is off to a bad start and it's continuing down its road. But the meaning of this document is really just acknowledging or ratifying what the town board has resolved to do.
It's acknowledging receipt of the circulation notice and consenting to the town board being the lead agency.
And if we took no action on this in 30 days' time, it would be adopted.
Yes, essentially.
The resolution would be adopted, but it would be the same.
You'd be deemed under the law to have consented.
And if the board voted not to consent, just to cover all the bases, then
Well, that means that if you're not going to consent, then does that mean you want to be lead agency?
Do you want to challenge it and be an agency?
that's it's a black white.
Well, it seems to me that, I'm no expert, that the town board asked if we wished to be. We very clearly sent the message. Let me just say that aside from what was said publicly at the last meeting, the rest of you know that I reached out to you individually and asked for your opinions. I got some opinions back in writing, and there was a unanimity of feeling that you did not wish to take on that responsibility. So I think this was simply saying, you've told us, verbally, we've heard from you that you do not wish to challenge us for the agency status. This, as I understand it, is simply saying, we hear you and we're in agreement.
That's what the intention was.
I'm going to go back on what I said earlier. Would it be possible under Part 2 to just say the Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board has advisory authority over this proposed amendment under Article 12 and just drop the thing about site plan?
Well, you can just take it out of the, somewhere out of the middle of the,
It's under item 2, under whereas, number 2.
Is your point that we don't yet have?
Exactly.
Don't yet have?
Well, the zoning district itself doesn't even
I'm
exist.
looking for the
Yes,
language.
That's my point. I don't even think, just delete that part of it. We do have the authority to advise on zoning amendments. We clearly have that. And that allows us to say, yes, the town board.
All right, so John has now amended under whereas 2 to read the Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board, Planning Board, has advisory authority over this proposed project pursuant to subsection 12563, 125-64.4 of the Town of Rhinebeck zoning law.
I like it.
All right. Any,
I move to,
may I have a motion to accept the resolution as amended. Motion, please.
So moved.
All right, may I have a second? Edna, I will roll call. Michael?
Aye.
Michael in favor. Craig?
Aye.
In favor. Sean?
Aye.
In favor. Edna?
Aye.
Delise is absent, and I vote in favor.
Sharon?
Sharon? Sharon should be added to the list
No,
of people.
that's apologies, that's,
Roll call, so.
you know what, I brainlessly, I just brainlessly took the roll from the website,
Sharon,
sorry.
Sharon?
Sorry, Sharon.
Sharon is voting aye in favor. The motion passes by a vote of 7, with the seventh person being absent. Excellent. Anything else to come before the board this evening? May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second, please. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Thank you, everyone.